As promised, here is part 2 of my interview with MSNBC's Rachel Maddow. I will say this, not only do you get to hear firsthand all of the amazing things that Rachel is up to these days, one of the busiest women that I know, journalism and otherwise, but we also have a very powerful conversation about the threat of a dual state system that is a critical element of an autocracy, this idea that there are people that are marginalized and excluded from due process. Sound familiar? Sound like something that we're going through right now in the United States? So, as I said, here's part 2 of my conversation with Rachel, and trust me, you're going to enjoy it. I covered I'll call it the very public spat between Leonard Leo and Donald Trump, even though Leonard Leo's response to it was pretty ingratiating and obsequious. It was a very kind of visible split with Trump dumping on Leo and the Federalist Society. But it also kind of leads to this general idea that people are always asking me, Rachel, how can you continue to have any level of optimism that we're not in a full-scale constitutional crisis right now, because we don't see compliance with court orders and judgments from our judiciary. And there's a clear disrespect by the executive branch to the judicial branch, which I keep on harping is a co-equal branch of government, equally as powerful, equally as important. I mean, maybe I don't love the question, are we in a constitutional crisis? Because I do think that's a very loaded question. And I don't even know if I'm suited properly to answer that from an intellectual standpoint. But I wanted to know your thoughts about what I think is the takeaway, which is for Trump to bite the hand that feeds him is a sign of his lack of discipline, 1. And 2, I also think it's a sign that we really are, though, inching to a point, if not already careening towards a point, where we are going to see full-scale defiance from the executive branch, where they're just not going to give a shit when a judge tells them to do something. And they're just going to say to hell with it. And I worry about kind of the ripple effect that's going to happen across everything that we're dealing with in our country right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that are going on there. I mean, I think sort of sociologically, what we're learning about Trump in his second term is that, I mean, I don't mean this in an ad hominem way, but, you know, he's old. He's forgetful. You can, on any given day, find him answering direct questions about stuff his administration has done, about which he professes total ignorance or no idea, or did I do that, or did we do that? Well, you tell me. Like, he just doesn't, he seems checked out. And he also seems very suggestible. Like, the last person who spoke to him and told him a thing about the world or about politics or about something that he should be doing it becomes his new opinion. And it's, you know, it's very dangerous, obviously, for the country to have a president who's that manipulable. But it also means that when he blurts out weird stuff, it's pretty easy to, figure out who's been talking to him and saying those things, right? Because in his first term, he did effectively outsource, for example, the selection of judges to the Federalist Society. He used to brag about it all the time. And people were clearly telling him, oh, your Federalist Society gambit is so impressive. And that's what people are going to love about you. And even the other controversial stuff you're going to do, conservatives everywhere will laud you for generations with all this wonderful stuff you've done for the Federalist Society. So that's the way he used to talk about it. Now, clearly, people inside the second Trump term are telling him these Federalist Society judges are all squishes and you made a mistake here. And, oh, why are you getting ruled against? Why are you getting contrary rulings so often, even from Trump appointed judges? Because they're Federalist Society judges and you were taken for a ride and you can't let that happen. Clearly, that's the conversation around the judiciary that's happening inside the White House, and he's blurting it out. And who even knows if he realizes that he's contradicting his earlier statements about the Federalist Society? I'm not sure that I don't think that he is able to track even his own opinions over time, because I don't think they're deeply rooted in any sense of reality.
And they're not consistent. So
no, they're not consistent, and that doesn't bother him. It's whatever somebody last said to him is his latest opinion. So I think that's an unflattering, I will admit, but I think pretty sociologically accurate depiction of what life is like inside the president's brain and inside the White House among people who he's talking to. And so that kind of tells you where MAGA is at in terms of the judiciary. I think it also is a sign of what we should expect for Trump second term judicial appointments, right? We've got Emil Bove, who's been nominated already, which is insane. But I think we should expect random donors' children to be nominated in their 20s for, appeals court judgeships. I think we should expect, people he's pardoned for felony fraud to be nominated for judgeships. I think we should expect, more Fox News contributors to be nominated to like the Supreme Court. Like, I think it's going to get really bananas in terms of what counts as a judicial nomination. And in terms of the country, the administration has been towing the line, getting very close to fully crossing the line in terms of defying court orders. They've essentially been pushing it as far as they can and delaying and sort of, if not lying to the courts, at least sort of refusing to be straight up with the courts about the fact that they're not obeying court orders. When it comes to the point where it's just outright defiance of court orders, we recognize that this is your order, but we don't recognize the legitimacy of you as a court. That's the crisis, and that's the end of the rule of law in the United States of America. And that's not only a legal crisis and a political crisis, but that very quickly becomes an economic crisis, because the rule of law is the iron structure on which our economy is built. And if they knock out that pillar, the U.S. economy collapses.
I like to give some people some small reassurances that we'll know it's done when they stop showing up to court. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. I mean, when these Trump lawyers actually stop going to court, I feel like that's when we'll know that it's done. But in the meantime, the gold star and the gold medal does go to convicted felon Donald Trump for his ability to scream at the clouds the way that he does, and to satisfy that meme of yelling at the kid mowing the lawn.
Yeah. I mean, they are all of the talking smack about the courts and talking smack about judges is designed to lay the groundwork with the public for delegitimizing the judiciary as an institution, and thereby, getting to that authoritarian breakthrough moment where they say, when they finally say, which they haven't said yet, we recognize that this is a judgment of this court, but we don't believe that this court is legitimate and we don't intend to follow it. They're threatening that. They're not yet doing that. But that's the point of no return.
So this is actually the perfect place for us to pivot. And I wanted to kind of keep on the theme, Rachel, of us talking about the law. And obviously that's within my wheelhouse, but more explicitly, this idea that the Trump administration has been running to the Supreme Court of the United States to get on its shadow docket with a level of frequency that we haven't seen in history. And there's a professor, Aziz Hook, who said that it reminds him of 1930s Germany, where you had a dual state system as it's being defined. One where you have a very public forward-facing system of the law versus one where it's a shadow system of, quote, power and emergencies. Because that's where we're getting a lot of these significant substantive rulings that impact all of us as Americans when it comes to DOGE or immigration or, any of those topics. Your thoughts, because this is kind of, the law may be my wheelhouse, but authoritarianism is yours, Rachel. You have not only squarely studied it, but, for example, Prequel, your book, An American Fight Against Fascism, it's now available in paperback, which I want to emphasize right now because I think it's important for people to know that. But again, fascism, authoritarianism, dictatorships, that's kind of your jam. And we've talked about this before, you and I. I mean, this idea that there are low information voters and high information voters and people in between, but the consumption of the information is important, right? So if you have a public facing court that's making these decisions that look like that's in the norm, but then you have this shadow docket that's doing all this other shit behind the scenes that's really, really substantial and substantive and consequential. Are we truly back in a 1930s Germany situation, especially when we see all the other executive orders and all of the kind of codified hatred that we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question with a lot of elements to it. First of all, I mean, obviously, there's nobody's a Nazi except Nazis. There's no Hitler except Hitler. There's no Holocaust except the Holocaust. There's no equivalence to what happened with Nazi rule in Germany. That said, there are lessons from the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany and from the way it conducted itself in power. And Aziz Hook's essay is about this book by Frankel called The Dual State, which is a really important, and at the time, I think it was not at the time necessarily seen as revolutionary. It was seen as kind of a academic, dry treatise, but over the generations, it's, I think, become seen as a more pointed and important defining thing about what it means to live under authoritarian rule. And the central insight of Frankel's central insight in that book was that a lot of people in the sort of favored group, the in group in an authoritarian society, will be able to live as if there is still law and order, as if there are still rules. There will be taxes levied and they will be expected to pay them. There will be parking tickets issued. There will be, civil courts that you can go to in order to settle matters in business or personal life or whatever it is. Things will seem normal, but increasingly over time, people outside the outgroups, scapegoated groups, outgroups, minorities, disfavored groups, political dissidents, and it's a list that gets larger and larger and larger over time, the longer an authoritarian is in power. Those people will be pushed outside the legal state. And in their world, there will be not only no due process, but no predictability in terms of state action, that there's unlimited potential for violence against them. There's no redress. There's no rules. And there's no telling one day to the next what you are allowed to do, what you might be punished for or indeed killed for. And over time, as an authoritarian government further consolidates power and needs to continually enlarge the groups of people that get blamed for everything bad, the number of people outside the legal state grows and grows and grows. And so the sort of, I think the emotional cautionary tale there is like, yeah, if you think that your things are good for you, and it's only these other people who you don't like who are experiencing, the masked agents in the streets snatching kids out of their cars on their way to school and disappearing people to black site prisons where there's no legal process for months or years or the rest of their life, like all your level of comfort that that's not happening to you is nothing that you can rely on over time. Because once you've allowed a dual state system to take hold, the lawless part of the state will grow and grow and grow until it gets you too. And so the point is to make sure that there's no part of state action which is ungoverned by law. There's no parallel world in which there isn't, you're not allowed to know the name of the officer who is arresting you or the means by which they're legally claiming to hold you. There can't be any space in government action for lawlessness, or lawlessness will eventually encompass the entire society. And that insight, I think, is really helpful, even though, again, only Nazis are Nazis, only Hitler is Hitler, only World War II is World War II. But that, I think, Frankel's central insight there, I think, is absolutely what we are living with right now, with these naive political assurances that the normalcy that some Americans experience is permanent, when it clearly, once you've got people being treated outside the law, it's just a matter of time.
This past Memorial Day, I shared with my viewers and followers that I had traveled to Normandy, France in November, right after the November 2024 election. And I went with my mom, my husband, and my daughter. And my husband was insistent that we go to Normandy to be able to go to the D-Day beaches. He's an avid history buff, but we wanted my daughter to see what sacrifice was like for thousands of young people that had to give the ultimate and pay the ultimate sacrifice to be able to defend democracy. And one of the things that I learned more about and that I've invited people to learn more about is the French resistance. And so I think about what you say about the exclusionary actions that take place in a dual state system, and the minorities and the people that end up not being able to have due process and have the laws. And yet I saw the French resistance, and I saw they were small but mighty, and they got bigger and bigger. And the one thing that I think that you do so well always, and better than anybody else, is not only do you manage people's expectations, Rachel, when you present them with reality and facts and evidence in the way that you present your show and your pods, but you've also done an exceptional job of also being a witness, and spreading word about the rallies and the protests and the people that are being marginalized, Rachel, that are being downtrodden, and that are saying, we are the resistance. We are the people that are not going to take this lying down. You've made it a really kind of core point of your show. And you don't have a lot of real estate, Rachel. Trust me, I know. When I had a show one day a week, you don't get a lot of real estate. So why has it been so important for you to continue to elevate the visibility of the protests and the rallies and the people that are saying, we're not going to let this happen to our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our children, because democracy is just too important?
Yeah. I think it's the most important story in the country. And the attempted authoritarian overthrow of the U.S. Constitution and the attempted installation of effectively a would-be dictator in this country is the environment in which we are operating. Like, that's happening. I also feel like there's not very much about that I don't understand. Like, it's the same everywhere. This is blonde Berlusconi. You know what I mean? Like, this is inarticulate Viktor Orban, right? Like, these guys are all the same. The authoritarian playbook is the same everywhere. They all do the same stuff. And so I feel like, covering Trump's every utterance, and every new outrage and attempt to arrogate power to himself that the Constitution doesn't give him and all this stuff. Like, I understand we need to cover that. And I feel like that's well covered in the news, and that's great. But that's like the Washington story. And then the defining story of our time is not going to be that we've got now in our country one of these would-be dictators like so many other countries have had to contend with. The defining story of our time will be whether or not the American people stop it. Whether or not the American people allow our country to become a dictatorship and to have our Constitution overthrown and to get rid of elections and have a permanent semi-monarchy or whatever it is that they want, or whether the American people will stop it. And so Trump having worse approval ratings in his first 100 days in office than any American president in the history of polling is a really important story. Trump facing demonstrations, large and small, every single day of the week in every state in the country is a huge part of, I think, measuring sort of the temperature of the American people in this in the response to him, and on the issue of immigrants, which is his favorite scapegoat, right? His two favorites are immigrants and trans people. When you see the way the American people in red states, blue states, rural America, cities everywhere, when you see the way the American people have recoiled against the performative cruelty that Trump has demonstrated, particularly towards immigrants, I think that is not something that he was counting on. I think it is absolutely a limiting factor in terms of what he's going to be able to accomplish in his attempted overthrow and what he's going to be able to accomplish in traditional political terms. And I just don't think there's anything more important than that in the country. I mean, seeing people in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, right? In Katie Phang's backstory hometown, seeing people in Boise, Idaho, seeing people in small town Indiana stand up and say, give them back. Hey, you going to send that guy back from El Salvador? You going to get that guy back? Hey, due process. Like they were really counting on the American people having real bloodlust about immigrants, about non-white people generally, and about immigrants in particular. And the American people do not have that bloodlust. And in fact, what they have is empathy and a sense of solidarity and a willingness to stand up and hold signs and shake their fist and tell people to do the right thing. And that's going to be the story of this time in American history.
Before you and I part ways, which is always making me sad because I don't get to see you that much anymore, and it really does bum me out. But can you let people know what you've been up to lately? I mean, everybody kind of follows your comings and you're going so intently. It always makes me chuckle. They're like, Rachel's only one day a week, or where is Rachel, and et cetera. And it's funny because I always tell people, especially when I was at MS, they're like, oh, do you know Rachel? I'm like, yes, I know who she is. What is she doing? Where is she? I'm like, well, my GPS isn't working anymore.
I dropped an RFID tag in her book bag years ago, but it's died.
Little does she know. But like, what are you up to these days? I mean, everybody knows that you still do the show one day a week, but you are probably one of the busiest people I know, which is a blessing for all of us, my present company included. So what are you up to these days?
I have a lot going on. I did the 5 days a week MSNBC primetime during the first 100 days, which was really good. It reminded me also that I cannot do that show 5 days a week anymore. Like I'm just physically not capable of it. I'm 52. I would be dead by the time I am 53. I cannot do it. There's a reason I stopped doing that a few years ago. Can't do it. So I'll be every Monday night on MSNBC, and I'll be there for special coverage whenever they need me. I am working on another book. I have started the process of my next podcast, my next history podcast, which I think is going to be really good. I'm really excited about it. It's a little bit different than all the previous podcasts that I've done. But it's like, I'm just obsessed. I'm actually trying to produce a play. I've got 2 documentaries in the works. I've got a feature film that's in the works. And I have got believe it or not, a scripted TV show, which we are trying to cast right now. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on. And Susan keeps telling me that I'm supposed to be taking time off, which I haven't figured out how to do yet. But,
well, you're welcome to come on our Alaskan cruise if you want.
I have no interest on ever being in a cruise ship ever in my entire life. I'm excited that you're doing it, mostly because I think the family aspect of it is cool and the Alaska part of it is cool. But I don't want to be in a boat.
God, Rachel, fine. I won't smuggle you onto the boat in my suitcase then.
My parents went on a boat. I know it's a ship. You're supposed to say a ship. My parents did it not that long ago, and they had a good time and stuff, and like tried to, but I don't know. I'd rather swim, honestly. Forget it.
Well, luckily for you, the boats are on the water. So if you needed to,
just tow me. Yeah.
Well, look, Rachel, I'm not kidding when I say that I do miss you.
I miss you too, Katie.
Because you are so busy, I just want to underscore, obviously, the fact that you took the time to have this conversation with me is significant. It is a privilege to be able to share time with you. And I am very grateful for our friendship and our camaraderie. And I really look forward to seeing all the other stuff that you're doing. And I welcome you to always feel free to come back and hang out at the Katie Phang News channel on YouTube as I continue my foray into the world of independent media. But sincerely, I do miss you, friend. And thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Onward, Katie. I can't wait to see all the next things that you're gonna do. And
onward, upward.
And I'll show up with Susan and my dogs to house sit the next time you get on a boat with Mom. So let me know.
Yes. And then you can take Lucky, the rescue dog, my rescue dog, and he'll be happy to have the company.
Fantastic. Thanks, darling. Thanks. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you, Rachel. Katie Phang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.